They say every small town hides its secrets. And if you've lived in a place long enough, you know that those secrets have a way of clinging to the air, like smoke after a fire. My small town, tucked deep in the backwoods of North Carolina, is no exception. From the outside, it looks like a postcard, rolling hills, long stretches of pine forest, a downtown strip with faded signs and squeaky screen doors. The kind of place where everyone knows your name, and gossip runs faster than the river after a storm. But beneath that quaint surface runs something darker. A legend, an urban legend, if you want to call it that. Except around here, nobody dares to call it just a story. I grew up hearing the whispers. Kids told it on the playground in hushed voices, daring each other to repeat the details after dark. Old men swapped tales at the barber shop, lowering their voices whenever an outsider walked in. And the local preacher, he wouldn't even say the name out loud. Instead, he'd shake his head, spit on the ground, and mutter a prayer. That's how serious folks around here took it. Now, I'll admit something. I didn't believe a word of it at first. When you're young, legends sound like bedtime stories made to scare you straight. Something to keep you from wandering too far into the woods or hanging around the wrong people. But as I got older, I realized there's a reason this story never died, even as the town itself started to wither. People moved away. Stores closed. Roads cracked. But the legend? It stuck around. And if you ask me, there's a reason for that. The legend goes back decades, maybe even a century, depending on who you ask. Some say it started after the Civil War, when soldiers came limping home with more ghosts on their backs than they could carry. Others trace it to the 1920s, when bootleggers ruled these back roads and men went missing after crossing the wrong folks. Still others claim it's older than all of that, something that doesn't belong to people at all, but to the land itself. The story has different versions, but the core is always the same. Out there, past the last gas station, past the line where the asphalt turns to gravel and the gravel turns to dirt, there's a clearing in the woods. If you stand there after midnight, you'll hear it first, a sound like whistling, carried low and slow through the trees. Then the smell hits, burnt sugar, sickly sweet, thick enough to turn your stomach. That's when you know he's close. They call him the popcorn man. I know. It sounds ridiculous at first. A name makes it feel almost harmless, like a sideshow character or some harmless mascot at a county fair. But that's how it always goes with things like this, isn't it? Evil doesn't always wear the mask you expect. Sometimes it comes dressed in something silly, something that lures you in before it shows its teeth. The popcorn man, according to the legend, once worked the traveling fairs that came through this part of North Carolina in the 1940s and 50s. He ran the popcorn cart, the kind with a glass case and a hand-cranked drum. Folks remembered him as tall, thin, always with a crooked smile. But they also remembered how he lingered, how he stared a little too long at the children, how he never seemed to pack up at the end of the night, like he was waiting for something or someone. Then, one year, the fair packed up and left. Except him, he stayed. Nobody saw him leave town. Nobody saw him get on the trucks. They just stopped seeing him altogether. At least, not in the daylight, because the legend says he never really left. Late at night, people started reporting strange things. The smell of popcorn drifted through their windows when no fair was in town. The sound of a cart's wheels squeaking down the road long after midnight. Children swore they saw a man with hollow eyes standing at the edge of the woods watching. Farmers found corn in their fields burned black. Kernels shriveled into something that didn't look quite natural. And then came the disappearances. This part of the story always changes depending on who tells it, but the bones stay the same. A boy vanishes while walking home from church. A young woman disappears on her way to meet friends. A farmer's daughter never comes back from the well. No bodies, no blood, no clues, just gone. And always, the smell of burnt sugar lingering in the air, clinging to the walls, saturating the earth. Now. Outsiders chalked it up to runaways, accidents. Maybe even the kind of crimes small towns prefer not to talk about. But locals knew better. They knew it was him. The popcorn man, the way the old folks tell it. He doesn't just take you. He consumes you. That's why you hear the whistling first. That's why you smell the burning. He's cooking, roasting souls like kernels in a drum until they pop into something else. Something not quite human anymore. The legend says that if you're unlucky enough to be taken, you don't just die. You become part of him. Your eyes, your voice, your laughter, they melt into his. He carries you with him, trapped forever, another echo in his hollow grin. And if you're really unlucky, your family might see you again, not as yourself, but as something twisted. A shadow flickering just beyond the firelight. A familiar face peeked from behind the glass of his cart as it's the kind of story you'd think kids made up to scare each other. And that's exactly what I thought for years. Until the summer when everything changed, because when you grow up in a place like this, you can't stay away from the woods forever. And sometimes the woods don't wait for you to come to them. Sometimes they come to you. That summer, my friends and I thought we were just chasing adventure, sneaking out, daring each other to go deeper into the pines, laughing too loud to hear the warnings in the wind. But what we found that night wasn't a game. It wasn't a dare. It was the reason this town still whispers his name, and once you see the popcorn man with your own eyes, you'll never laugh at the story again that it started on one of those humid nights where the air itself feels heavy, pressing down on your shoulders, filling your lungs like wet cotton. The crickets were so loud you could barely hear yourself think, and the moon hung low over the tree line like a swollen lantern. That's the night Joey came up with the idea. Let's find the clearing. He said that Joey was always the one pushing us further than we wanted to go. He was the kind of friend who laughed in the face of dares, the one who walked across the rickety bridge when everyone else hesitated. He claimed his uncle had seen the clearing once, said it was real, said it was cursed, and said no one in their right mind went back a second time. To Joey, that was just another invitation that Nikki, my best friend since grade school, rolled her eyes. You just want to scare Luke again, she said, throwing me a look. And she wasn't wrong. Joey loved getting under my skin, and he knew exactly which buttons to push. But Kyle leaned forward, curiosity glinting in his eyes. If it's real, don't you want to see it? He asked. I mean, come on. Everyone talks about it, but no one actually goes. Maybe we'll finally prove it's just a story. That's how it always starts, isn't it? The promise that you're just going to prove the legend wrong. That you're stronger, braver, smarter than the fools who came before us, so the four of us packed flashlights, a couple of cans of soda, and a pack of stale crackers we called dinner. And we slipped into the woods. The forest was different at night. Paths we knew like the backs of our hands twisted into strange shapes. Trees leaned closer, branches reaching down like fingers. Every sound felt amplified, the snap of a twig, the flutter of wings, the crunch of leaves beneath our sneakers. The deeper we went, the quieter it got, like the woods themselves were holding their breath. We walked for nearly an hour before Joey stopped. Do you smell that? He whispered that at first. I thought he was messing with us, trying to get in my head. But then it hit too, sweetness, faint, but unmistakable. Like caramel burning at the bottom of a pot. Popcorn, Nikki said softly, her voice barely above her breath. We stood there, for kids frozen in the dark listening, and then we heard it. The faint, wheezy whistle of someone breathing through their teeth, slow, steady, coming from deeper in the woods. Joey grinned, flashlight beam cutting ahead. Told you, he said, and started walking. Everything in me screamed to turn back, to run. But the thing about fear is, it's hard to admit when you're drowning in it. So I followed. We all did. The clearing looked exactly the way the stories described. A wide circle where the trees refused to grow, the earth blackened as if scorched. The air shimmered with heat, though no fire burned. And in the center stood a popcorn cart, and it looked impossibly out of place, like someone had plucked it straight from a fairground and dropped it in the middle of the forest. The glass case was fogged from the inside, and metal washworked with rust. But inside, something popped. Kernels bursting one by one, though no flame, no power, no heat source kept it alive. We edged closer, our footsteps crunching on the brittle ground. That's when I saw it. A face pressed against the glass from the inside. Pale, wide-eyed, mouth frozen in a scream. I stumbled back, nearly dropping my flashlight. Nikki grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. Joey squinted, stepping closer. It's just a reflection, he said, though his voice cracked on the last word. But it wasn't, because the face shifted. Its eyes blinked. Its lips parted, mouthing words we couldn't hear, and then, slowly, the figure stepped back into the shadows of the cart. Kyle whispered, "We need to go." But it was too late. The whistling grew louder, circling the clearing. The air filled with that sickly sweet smell until it burned our throats. The ground beneath our feet vibrated, like a drumbeat echoing through the soil. And from behind the cart, he stepped out, the popcorn man. His body was long and thin, like someone had stretched him past what bones should allow. His skin sagged in places, pale and waxy. His eyes were black pits that seemed to drink the light from our flashlights. And his smile, God, his smile was a jagged crescent to wide, splitting his face in half. Then in his hands, he held the crank of the cart. With each turn, the popping inside grew louder, more frantic, like something trapped and desperate to get out. He looked at us one by one. His gaze lingered on Nicky the longest, and I swear I felt the temperature drop around her that Joey, ever the idiot, forced a laugh. "Cool costume, man," he said. Trying to sound brave, the popcorn man tilted his head. Then he laughed as if it wasn't a normal laugh. It was hollow, layered, like a dozen voices all spilling out at once. Some were high-pitched, others deep, others choked with sobs. And beneath it all was a sound like kernels bursting, sharp and wet. Nicky tugged at my sleeve. "We have to run," she whispered, so we did. We bolted back into the trees, branches whipping our faces, roots clawing at our ankles. Behind us, the laughter followed, echoing in every direction. The smell of burnt sugar clung to our clothes, our hair, our skin. No matter how fast we ran, it was always there, just behind us by some miracle. We burst out onto the dirt road near Joey's house. We collapsed in the dust, gasping for air, our hearts pounding. The woods were silent. No laughter, no whistling, just the normal sounds of night, crickets and frogs and the distant rush of the river. For a moment, we thought maybe, just maybe, we'd imagined it. But then Joey lifted his shirt to wipe his face, and we saw it. A handprint burned into his skin. Thin, long-fingered, pressed deep enough to welt as no one said a word. That night changed everything, and in the weeks that followed, Joey grew different. He was quieter, more withdrawn. Sometimes he'd laugh at things that weren't funny, a hollow sound that made the hairs on my arms stand up. He smelled faintly of burnt sugar, even after showering. His mom said he wasn't sleeping. His dad caught him wandering the woods at night, barefoot, eyes glazed. The rest of us tried to pretend we were fine. Kyle buried himself in football practice. Nicky stopped answering my calls for a while, said she just needed space. And me, I started avoiding the woods. I couldn't even look at a bag of popcorn without my stomach turning. But the popcorn man wasn't finished with us, that he never is. The last time I saw Joey alive was a Friday in late August, just before school started back up. The town was heavy with heat, cicadas screaming from the trees, the kind of day when nothing feels right. I'd gone over to his house because he hadn't been answering calls, and his mom was worried. She said he'd barely eaten all week, that he stayed locked in his room for hours. When I walked in, the first thing I noticed was the smell. Sweet, cloying, unmistakable. Burnt sugar that Joey was sitting on the edge of his bed, staring at the floor. His skin looked pale, almost waxy, and his lips were cracked like he'd been chewing them raw. When he finally looked up at me, I swear, for a split second, I didn't recognize him. His eyes weren't his eyes anymore. They were too dark, too empty. "He wants me to come back," Joey whispered. His voice was hoarse, broken. "Joey, you need help," I told him. "We have to tell someone. We can't keep this to ourselves anymore." But he just shook his head. "It's too late for me." He already mocked me. He pulled up his sleeve, and the burn on his arm had spread, branching like veins of coal under his skin. That night, Joey disappeared. His parents thought he ran away. The sheriff organized a search party, dogs combing the woods, neighbors lighting lanterns. But I knew better. We all did. The clearing was waiting. When they found his shoes by the river bank, the townsfolk shook their heads and muttered that the current must have taken him. But the water was low that week, shallow, calm. There was no way. And the truth sat heavy in my chest, a weight I could never shake, because I dreamed of him and I dreamed of Joey standing in that clearing, barefoot, smiling to wide. His voice came to me in layers, broken into echoes, like he was speaking through a chorus of 100 others. He didn't look like Joey anymore. He looked hollow, a husk. And behind him, the popcorn man cranked his machine, the sound of kernels bursting filling the night. I woke up with the smell of burnt sugar choking my lungs. After that, things in town got worse. Livestock went missing. Cornfields turned up black and brittle, every stalk twisted like it had grown through fire. Children started complaining of strange dreams, dreams about a tall man with hollow eyes who stood at the edge of their beds. The preacher gave a sermon warning about the dangers of old sins lingering in the soil. He never said the popcorn man's name, but everyone knew. And when Nicky stood up in the middle of that sermon and screamed that he was real, that we'd seen him with our own eyes, the church fell into chaos. Some believed her. Others called it hysteria. But me? I knew she was telling the truth, because the smell never left. It was in my clothes, my sheets, even my skin. I couldn't escape it one night. Kyle came to me. His hands shook, and his face was pale. "He's after me now," he said. He swore he'd heard the cart outside his window, wheels squeaking softly on the pavement. He swore he saw a shadow move across his yard, tall and thin, stopping beneath his bedroom window. We made a pact that night, me, Kyle, and Nicky, if the popcorn man wanted us. We wouldn't just sit and wait. We'd face him. And if we could, so we went back to the clearing dock. It was darker than I remembered, the air heavy with smoke that seemed to come from nowhere. The cart was there again, glass fogged, kernels bursting inside like a heartbeat. And behind it, he waited that the popcorn man didn't move when we stepped into the clearing. He just smiled, lips peeling back to reveal teeth too sharp to many. The crank of his cart turned on its own, steady, relentless. Each pop echoed like a gunshot in the night. Kyle shouted, "Let him go." His voice cracked, but he didn't back down. That the popcorn man tilted his head. Slowly, almost casually, he lifted his hand and pointed to the glass, and there, inside the cart, faces pressed against the fogged glass, Joey, others I didn't recognize. Their mouths opened in silent screams, their eyes pleading. Each time a kernel burst, one of them flinched, their bodies flickering like static as Nicky grabbed my hand, squeezing so tight my bones ached. "What'll we do?" She whispered that I wanted to run. Every part of me screamed to turn back, to never come here again. But when I looked at Joey's face, twisted and terrified, something inside me broke. I stepped forward. "Take me," I said. "Let them go." "Take me instead." The popcorn man's smile widened, stretching impossibly far, splitting his cheeks. He leaned closer, and for a moment I thought it was over, that I'd feel his burned hand on my skin, that my soul would roast like the others. But then Kyle shouted, "No," and hurled a rock at the cart. The glass shattered. The sound was deafening. The faces inside screamed, voices tearing free into the night. The cart erupted in sparks and smoke, kernels bursting like fireworks. The ground shook, and the popcorn man let out a roar that wasn't human, a sound that rattled the trees and shook the sky. We ran. The forest exploded behind us, trees cracking, earth splitting. The laughter followed, shrieking in 100 voices, filling every shadow. I didn't dare look back. When we finally stumbled out of the woods, gasping, bleeding, covered in soot, the clearing was gone. We went back the next day. No cart, no scorched ground, nothing. Just a circle of trees, silent and still. Some people say we imagined it. That grief over Joey drove us to spin a story. But Nicky and Kyle remember. I remember. And sometimes, late at night, when the air grows too still and the smell of burnt sugar creeps through my window, I hear the whistling. The popcorn man isn't gone. He never is, because legends don't die. They wait, and in my small town, in the backwoods of North Carolina, he's still waiting.